5 years, 2 months, 14 days. Ethan Reed had counted each one from behind iron bars. Only one thing kept him alive within those prison walls: revenge. Now, 3 days after his escape, he was finally approaching his target. With nothing but a rusted pistol on his belt and a name tattooed across his chest: John Davis. "Today is Judgment Day," he muttered, straightening himself on the stolen horse, the marks on his throat still bearing the scars from the ropes on the night of his escape. 5 years ago, while fleeing with $5,000 in gold taken during the Pony Express robbery, John Davis had reported him to the sheriff. That night, everything had crumbled before his eyes: his freedom, his dreams, and his fiancée, Sarah. The disappointment in Sarah's eyes on the last night before his imprisonment still burned his soul. "I thought I loved you, Ethan, but you're just a greedy thief." These words had echoed in his head for 5 years against the cold prison cell walls. Beyond the hill, the farm in the middle of the valley finally came into view. Black Creek Farm, John Davis's home. Ethan halted his horse, his eyes like those of a hunter focused on his prey. The farm was more modest than Ethan had expected. Davis should have built a grand mansion with his gold. Instead, before him stood an ordinary farmer's house. He rode forward with measured steps, alert at every moment, ready to draw his weapon. His vengeance would be swift. He would kill Davis, perhaps set fire to the farm, and then head toward the Mexican border. However, as he approached the farm, he sensed something wasn't right. Fence repairs had been left half-finished and the crops in the fields appeared neglected. Only one window of the house had a light burning, and even that was flickering and dim. Ethan dismounted and tied his horse to a nearby tree as quietly as possible. He began circling the house, expecting John Davis at every corner. When he reached the backyard, he saw a small grave surrounded by stones, illuminated by moonlight. He bent down to read the inscription carved on the wooden cross: "John Davis, 1833–1869, beloved husband and honest man." Ethan's world suddenly stood still. The revenge he had dreamed of every night for 5 years, sworn to every morning, was now an empty fantasy. Davis was dead. The fire inside him suddenly extinguished, replaced by a strange feeling of emptiness. He circled the grave on tiptoe, as if touching it would make him believe Davis was really there. "Damn you, Davis," he whispered. "You escaped me again." He suppressed the urge to laugh. All this planning, all this hatred, and now his target was already in the ground. Just as he decided to leave the farm, he heard a noise from inside the house. Then came a muffled cough, a woman's cough. John Davis's wife, Ethan thought. He remembered hearing on the day he had met Sarah years ago that Davis had married an elegant lady from town. His wife must still be here, probably mourning her husband. Ethan considered. Perhaps he could still have his revenge. He could take everything John had loved, just as John had taken from him. He approached the house door in the darkness, his hand on the pistol at his belt. As he raised his hand to knock, he felt a strange hesitation within. He was on the threshold of the moment he had planned for 5 years, but something was stopping him. The door suddenly opened, and Ethan found himself face to face with a woman in the light of a small oil lamp. Despite being in her 30s, the woman's pale face bore signs of illness and grief. The dark circles under her eyes and her sunken cheeks showed she had recently endured great suffering. Yet even in this state, it was clear that she had once been very beautiful. "Can I help you, sir?" the woman asked in a hoarse voice. Her tone was tired but calm, as if she wasn't afraid of the stranger appearing at her door in the middle of the night. Ethan's mind went blank for a moment. His plan now seemed meaningless. I've lost my way," he finally said, removing his hat. "I could work on your farm in exchange for some food. I'm a good worker." He didn't even know where this lie came from. The woman hesitated for a moment, her eyes examining Ethan's face. "You can stay in the barn," she said at last. "We'll talk in the morning. My name is Rebecca Davis." Rebecca, John Davis's wife. Ethan felt a moment's hesitation as he introduced himself. "Ethan Morgan," he said, using a false surname. "A new name, a new identity, perhaps a new beginning, or perhaps a mask for a more insidious revenge." Rebecca nodded and showed him the direction to the barn. As Ethan walked away with heavy steps, a voice inside warned him that staying on this farm would be dangerous, But another voice coming from deeper within whispered that he should stay. As dawn washed the Nebraska plains with golden light, Ethan was already up. 5 years of prison life had taught him to rise early. The night spent on dry hay in the barn had almost made him miss his prison bunk. As he approached the farmhouse, he heard the sound of breaking glass from inside. He quietly approached the house and peered through the back door that opened into the kitchen. Rebecca was kneeling on the floor trying to pick up pieces of a broken glass. Ethan noticed her hands were trembling and how difficult each movement was for her. "Let me help," he said, opening the door. Rebecca jumped, looking at him with fear. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you," Ethan said, approaching slowly. "Let me help." As he collected the pieces of glass, he realized how frail Rebecca was. The woman had become so delicate she seemed as if she might break at the slightest breeze. "Thank you, Mr. Morgan," said Rebecca, trying to stand up. "After John managing this place alone, it hasn't been easy." Ethan felt anger stirring inside him at the mention of John's name, but this time it was much fainter. During the first week, very little conversation passed between them. While Ethan worked on repairs around the farm, he realized that Rebecca's illness was not just a common cold. One evening, she told him she had tuberculosis and that the doctors hadn't given her much time. "It got worse after John's death," Rebecca said, looking out the window. "Heart attack. It was very sudden. They found him one morning by the barn." Ethan felt a strange disappointment inside. John Davis dying before he could take his revenge still felt odd to him. As days passed, Ethan learned more about John Davis. Davis had been a respected, honest farmer in town. "He always tried to do the right thing," Rebecca said one evening, sitting by the fireplace. "Sometimes it cost him dearly. He often spoke of a mistake he had made in his past. He said he had hurt someone, but he never told me who or how. Even on his deathbed, he expressed his wish to find this man and apologize." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. The man he had hated for years was actually someone who felt remorse. This thought had somewhat extinguished his fire for revenge. Each day spent with Rebecca diminished the anger inside Ethan a little more. Her courage and the resilience she showed despite her illness deeply affected him. One evening, Rebecca's coughing fit was so severe that Ethan had to carry her to her bed. As he held her hand, he felt something changing within him. He now saw before him not just the wife of his enemy, but a brave woman struggling to hold on to life. "I'll take good care of you," Ethan promised, surprised at the sincerity in his own voice. The faint smile that appeared on Rebecca's face had melted the ice in Ethan's heart. By spring, Ethan had become capable of running the farm almost single-handedly. He had repaired the fences, plowed the fields, and reorganized the barn. Rebecca's health fluctuated between good days and bad. On her good days, Rebecca would sit in the garden watching Ethan, sometimes telling him about her life, how she had come from a good family, then met John and fallen in love with his honesty. They had no children, which was her greatest sorrow. "Perhaps God wanted it this way," she had said one day. "If I had a child now, who would I leave them with?" One night, when a violent storm broke out, Rebecca was trembling with fear. Ethan sat beside her and held her hand to calm her. Rebecca rested her head on his shoulder, and as Ethan breathed in the scent of her hair, he knew he had entered a path from which there was no return. "I'm glad I met you, Mr. Morgan," Rebecca whispered. Ethan writhed with guilt. He wanted to tell her who he really was, but he feared this confession would destroy everything. As the June sun bathed the fields of Black Creek Farm in crimson light, Ethan and Rebecca sat on the veranda, watching the sunset. 3 months had passed, and Ethan now felt like a part of the farm. His days were spent with field work, his evenings with Rebecca's stories. Despite the progression of her illness, the light in her spirit never dimmed. "You know," said Rebecca, wrapping herself in her blanket, "if John knew I loved you, he would be happy." Ethan froze, his face showing a mixture of surprise and fear. I don't know what to say," he stammered. Rebecca smiled gently. "You don't need to know. Just feeling it is enough." She placed her hand on Ethan's, her fingers as light as a butterfly's wing. "Life has given me very little time, but these days I've spent with you. They've given me a second chance." Ethan tried to swallow the lump in his throat. Each passing day he grew more attached to Rebecca, but at the same time he was crushed under the weight of his lie. He had thought many times about telling her who he was and why he had come, but each time fear had stopped him. "Rebecca, he began, but her fingers touched his lips. "Shh," said Rebecca. "I know who you are, Ethan Reed." These words turned Ethan's world upside down. His heart was beating as if it might burst through his chest. "How long have you known?" was all he could ask. Rebecca withdrew her hand and turned her gaze to the last rays of the sun. "I suspected from the moment I first saw you. John had cut out and saved your picture from newspaper clippings. He would look at it every day, and then you appeared at my door exactly as John had described you, with that anger in your eyes." Ethan jumped to his feet, his hand instinctively going to the pistol at his belt. "Why didn't you report me to the sheriff?" he asked, his voice trembling. Rebecca looked at him calmly. "Because John had forgiven you, Ethan. From the day he reported you, he suffered with remorse. In his final days, he dictated a letter to me, addressed to you, a letter asking for your forgiveness. But we didn't know where you were in prison or—" Her voice broke slightly. "And then you came, seeking revenge. But you chose to stay. You helped me, cared for me. God knows you gave me a reason to live." Ethan fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. The hatred he had nurtured for 5 years had now given way to profound regret. "John never sold you out," Rebecca continued. "He was at the sheriff's office that day for a completely different reason. When he heard of your plans, he wanted to stop you. He wanted to protect you from going to prison. But he was too late." Ethan held his head in his hands. Everything he had believed for years was a lie. John Davis hadn't sold him for money. He had tried to protect him from his own mistakes. "It was all a lie," he murmured. "The hatred that kept me alive for 5 years, the desire for revenge, all of it was a lie." Rebecca reached out and took his face in her hands. "No, not all of it. You being here with me now, that's real." That night, as Rebecca lay burning with fever, Ethan opened the drawer in John's desk and found the mentioned letter. "Dear Ethan," it began, "if you're reading these words, I'm probably long dead. I've felt remorse every day since I reported you. I didn't take the money. I just thought I was doing the right thing. But now I understand that I made the biggest mistake by betraying our friendship. I didn't take the gold. I turned it in to the sheriff. But that doesn't justify what I did to you. I hope you can forgive me someday. Your friend, John." Ethan read the letter over and over, each word stabbing his heart like a knife. John hadn't betrayed him. He had tried to protect him, and in return, Ethan had cursed him for 5 years. And now he had fallen in love with John's wife, this brave woman who was dying and who had given him her love. Ethan folded the letter, put it in his pocket, and returned to Rebecca's bedside. She was lying half unconscious from the fever. Ethan held her hand and whispered, "I love you, Rebecca, and I forgive John. I wish he could have forgiven me too." "He did," said Rebecca without opening her eyes. "Your name was in his last words, Ethan. Tell him I always loved him like a brother," he said. These words erased the last remnants of anger within Ethan. With tears in his eyes, he lay down beside Rebecca, took her in his arms, and together they drifted into sleep, reconciled with the ghosts of the past. The next morning, as Ethan worked in the field, he saw riders approaching from a distance. At the front was the town sheriff, Tom Wilkins, followed by 2 armed men. Ethan's heart tightened. The time had come. He ran to the house to explain the situation to Rebecca, but she had already come out onto the veranda and was watching the approaching men. "I know," said Rebecca, seeing the concern on Ethan's face. "Someone spotted you in town last night. They recognized you." Ethan took a deep breath. "I could run," he said. "I could go west, cross the border." But Rebecca shook her head. "No, Ethan. No more running. It's time to face what you've done." The sheriff dismounted and walked toward the farmhouse. "Ethan Reed," he said, his hand moving to his gun. "I'm here to arrest you. You're charged with escaping from prison and killing a guard." Ethan raised his hands. "I know, Sheriff. I'm ready." Rebecca stepped between them, standing straight despite her illness. "Sheriff Wilkins," she said, "this man has worked on my farm for the past few months. He's helped me after John's death. He's a good man, Sheriff. Give him a chance." The sheriff looked at Rebecca with astonishment. "Mrs. Davis, this man is a killer. He killed a guard and escaped from prison. Ethan interrupted. It wasn't intentional, Sheriff. There was a struggle as I tried to escape. I was defending myself. But I'm ready to pay for what I've done. The sheriff thought for a moment. All right, I'll take you to town. There will be a trial. But I should tell you, Reed, your chances aren't good. Judge Harrison is a harsh man, especially when it comes to prison escapees. Rebecca approached Ethan and took his hand. I'll wait for you, she said, no matter how long it takes. Ethan could only nod as the words caught in his throat. As the sheriff handcuffed him, Ethan looked at Rebecca one last time. In her eyes was both sorrow and hope. I'll come back, Ethan promised. This time I won't run. This time I'll do the right thing. On the way to town, the sheriff turned to Ethan. Mrs. Davis is a good woman, he said. She suffered a lot after John's death. I wouldn't have expected a man like you to help her. Ethan answered, looking into the distance. I wouldn't have expected it either, Sheriff. But sometimes, life gives us a second chance. And sometimes, we find love in the most unexpected places. The sheriff grunted. Love. What good will a prisoner's love do her? Ethan smiled. Perhaps none. But you can't imagine how much her love has done for me, Sheriff. She saved me. The trial took place in the town's single courtroom. The room was packed. Everyone wanted to see the famous outlaw Ethan Reed. Judge Harrison surveyed Ethan with a stern gaze. Ethan Reed, you are charged with escaping from prison and killing a guard. Do you have anything to say? Ethan stood up and answered in a clear voice. I am guilty, Your Honor. But I did not kill the guard intentionally. I was defending myself. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, everyone looking at each other in surprise. The judge struck his gavel on the desk, demanding silence. Witnesses were called. Evidence was presented. The prison warden confirmed that Ethan had been an exemplary prisoner. He was disciplined, quiet, he said. For 5 years, he never caused a single problem. Then the town doctor provided information about Rebecca's condition. Mrs. Davis's illness is in an advanced stage, he said. Without Mr. Reed, we might have lost her already. The courtroom buzzed again, this time in a more sympathetic tone. During his defense, Ethan neither claimed innocence nor begged for mercy. He simply told the truth, how a past filled with misunderstandings had led him down a path of revenge, and how love had saved him. After lengthy deliberations, the jury reached its verdict. Ethan Reed was sentenced to 10 years in prison for escape and attempted manslaughter, but with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Judge Harrison struck his gavel and left the courtroom. As Ethan was being led away by the guards, a voice rose from the courtroom. Rebecca, gathering her last strength, had stood up and was walking toward him. I'll wait, she said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. 5 years, 10 years, however long it takes. I'll wait. Ethan nodded, his eyes filling with tears. I'll come back, he said. I promise. On his first night in the cell, Ethan felt a strange peace. This time he would count the days not for hatred and revenge, but to return to the woman he loved. The next morning, a guard brought him a letter. It was written in Rebecca's handwriting. Dear Ethan, I may not have much time left in this world, but I will spend every moment thinking of you. The farm is now in your name, waiting for you when you get out. I may not be there, but my love will always be with you. You are the light at the end of my path of redemption, and I will try to be the light at the end of yours. For 4 long years, Ethan and Rebecca communicated through letters. In each letter, seeing Rebecca's handwriting grow weaker broke Ethan's heart. The illness was progressing, but the woman's spirit never dimmed. Today, the first flowers bloomed in the garden, she wrote in one of her letters. I thought of you, how you brought these lands back to life. Without you, these flowers wouldn't have bloomed, Ethan. Without you, I couldn't have held on to life either. Finally, at the end of the 4th year, Ethan was released on parole. When he arrived at Black Creek Farm, the sunset was painting the sky crimson. The farm looked better maintained than when he had left it. The neighbors must have helped Rebecca. A woman was sitting on the veranda, but as he approached, he realized it wasn't Rebecca. I'm Eleanor, the woman said, rising to her feet. Rebecca's sister. When her illness worsened, she called for me and I took care of her. Ethan's heart stopped. Where, where is she? Was all he could ask. Eleanor lowered her eyes. 3 weeks ago, she said in a soft voice. Even in her final moments, she talked about you. Tell Ethan I'm waiting for him, she would say. Ethan fell to his knees, feeling as if something had been torn from inside him. He had been too late. Rebecca had been too ill to wait for him. Eleanor handed him a small box. She wanted me to give you this, and there's a letter, too. When he opened the box, he found Rebecca's diary and a letter. The letter contained just one sentence. The path of redemption begins with love and ends with forgiveness. Below it, Rebecca had added a final note. Ethan, I'm waiting for you in the backyard. Just as I am beside John, I'll be there too. But don't rush. Live first, love, and forgive. Then come and tell me everything. Ethan smiled through his tears. Rebecca had given him the most precious gift, the power to forgive himself. Eleanor told him about the state of the farm. Rebecca had left everything to Ethan, the farm, the house, all her savings. She worked on your behalf, said Eleanor. Even in her final days, she was making plans for you. She wanted to turn part of the farm into a help center for released prisoners. When Ethan heard this idea, he felt something settle into place within him. Rebecca's dream would become his new purpose. Years later, Black Creek Farm became one of the most productive lands in the region. Ethan used part of the farm, fulfilling Rebecca's dream, as a center where released prisoners could make a fresh start. People called him the Redemption Farmer. To each newcomer, he would tell the story of Rebecca and John, teaching that true freedom lay not in revenge but in forgiveness. Ethan spent the rest of his life on the farm, never remarrying. But he wasn't alone. His life was filled with the love of people whose lives he had changed. And every evening at sunset, he would sit beside the 2 gravestones in the backyard, watching the last rays of the sun while talking to Rebecca and John. Today was a good day, he would say. 2 more former prisoners have started their own farms, thanks to you, to both of you. And the wind, as if it were their answer, would gently caress his face. One day, as an old and peaceful man, Ethan breathed his last with John's and Rebecca's letters by his side. And perhaps, at the end of the path of redemption, the 3 souls had finally found peace together. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is forgiveness, and sometimes the longest journey leads us home.